what's the most important thing in cooking? What makes cooking really good? And she said to me, well, she said, it depends on the ingredients, depends on what you put in there. And I said, no, I disagree with you. I said, it's good to know what the ingredients are, but there's something much more important, and that is managing the flame. Welcome, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. Today is going to be a little different. My partner, Reb Eli, is taking a Hanukkah day off. So it's going to be me, and this week is Parshat Miketz, but it's also Hanukkah. So it's going to be a special Hanukkah edition. And usually on every Wednesday morning, we will talk about the Parsha and offer a Hasidic commentary. Today, for the holiday, we'll do something special. I will offer a Hasidic commentary, but it's going to be in the form of a story by a Hasidic master, but really a neo-Hasidic master. And this is my beloved teacher, may his memory be of blessing, Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who's no longer with us. And what I'd like to do is share a Hanukkah story from this book called The Dream Assembly, which is a collection of stories about or told about Reb Zalman in sort of like a half fictional, half fact, half fictional kind of way. And these are stories that are retold by Howard Schwartz. And this is, we'll jump in here to a story related to Hanukkah and see what kind of pearls we take home from it. So let's go. And for those of you who may have the book or would like to refer to the book, which I highly recommend, the story is on page 143, and it's called The Secret of the Menorah. So here we go. Now, it was a custom of Reb Zalman to light two menorahs on Hanukkah. One in the window downstairs, facing east, and the other in the window upstairs, also facing east. First, he would say the blessing and light the menorah downstairs, and then he would repeat the blessing in a whisper and light the menorah upstairs. His Hasidim, or his followers, regarded this minhag as strange, and even stranger was the fact that Reb Zalman would put more oil in the menorah upstairs than that downstairs. And for hours after the menorah downstairs had burned out, Reb Zalman would sit before the candles of the menorah upstairs and stare into the flames. On several occasions, his Hasidim, his followers, asked him about this practice, but Reb Zalman refused to reveal the reason for it, or even to say why he sat so long in front of the candles. This had the effect of making the Hasidim even more curious, and they began to speculate among themselves. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Reb Chaim Elia, who was Reb Zalman's scribe, listened to these speculations, and they all seemed reasonable to him, but he wanted to know if any of them were correct, and if so, which one. Therefore, on the last night of Hanukkah that year, Chaim Elia sat down next to Reb Zalman as he peered into the flames of the menorah upstairs. And he too observed the shapes of the flames as they burned. Reb Zalman did not acknowledge Chaim Elia, but neither did he seem to mind his presence. And he simply continued to stare into the flames. So Chaim Elia remained there and did just the same thing. Now, for the first hour, Chaim Elia was completely mystified as to what the Rebbe might find so fascinating in those flames. But he kept his eyes fixed on them in any case. Then an hour or so later, a strange thing happened. Chaim Elia found himself thinking about his own departed father, Reb Nussen. He did not know what prompted these thoughts, but they were very intense indeed. And before long, Chaim Elia began to weep. The tears caused his eyes to become blurred. And when he looked at the flames of the candles, it seemed to him that he could almost see his father's face peering out of one of the flames, that of the shamash. This was curious indeed, and Chaim Elia peered closer, expecting the mirage to vanish. But it did not. He saw his father's face there more clearly than ever. Soon afterwards, Chaim Elia found himself thinking about his father's father, Rabbi Cheskel, also departed from this life. And lo and behold, as he stared into the flames, he could have sworn that he saw the face of Rabbi Cheskel there in the flame of one candle, that of the first night. Now, when this happened, Chaim Elia suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, and he stared rapidly in succession at each of the remaining candles. And in each and every one of them, he saw the face of another departed soul, to whom he had been close in his life. The face of Leah, wife of Rabbi Cheskel, Chaim Elia's grandmother, on his father's side. The face of his mother's father, Reb Zev. The face of Reb Zev's wife, Rezel, Chaim Elia's grandmother, on his mother's side. The face of Reb Yehuda, the sofer who had taught him how to write Sefer Torah scrolls. The face of Anat, a girl that Chaim Elia had loved as a boy, who had drowned in a tragic accident. The face of Reb Benjamin, who had often told wonderful tales to Chaim Elia as a child, and who had instilled in him a great love for the Agadah, for the stories of Torah. And he saw one other face, which he had never seen before in his life. Yet he recognized that face at once. It was the face of Reb Nachman of Breslov, whose wandering spirit in the world he now saw with certainty watched over him as well. Now, when Chaim Elia saw how he was surrounded with these beloved spirits, and how they all were present before him at the same time, he was completely overwhelmed and broke into tears of joy mixed with sorrow. And Reb Zalman, who had also seen those faces in the flames, embraced Chaim Elia and reassured him. And when Chaim Elia became calm, he turned toward Reb Zalman and said, "But Rebbe, how is it possible that I have seen these faces, so beloved, and so much missed. And then, for the first time, Reb Zalman explained the mystery of that menorah. And he said, the menorah downstairs represents this world, while the menorah that burns on the second floor represents the world on high. Therefore, when we peer into the flames of these candles, we are able to invoke spirits from the world to come. Now, spirits surround us all the time, especially those spirits of the departed whom we love, but they're invisible to us because spirits do not have a visible body. However, the flame of the candle is one medium in which it is possible for the faces of the spirits to reveal themselves, as has just happened to you. And they are able to make themselves known to us through this menorah in particular. For to sit before these flames is to invoke the forces that exist on high. Chaim Elia was truly amazed at this explanation, which might have seemed impossible to him an hour before, but which now seemed completely reasonable. And after that, Reb Zalman revealed the reason that he took his place in front of the candles of that menorah to the other Hasidim. And the next year, when Hanukkah returned, they too peered into those flames and saw the faces of those spirits that surrounded them. And after that, this practice became minhag, became a custom of all of those followers of Reb Zalman, and it is still observed to this very day. What a beautiful story. So many takeaways from this story. And I just want to say, first of all, I want to dedicate this to our beloved Rebbe, to Reb Zalman, who was an inspiration to so many of us, definitely touched my life very deeply. One of the things that Reb Zalman was known for was that he really worked to return the direct spiritual experience to Jewish practice. It wasn't enough to him or to us, those who studied with him, to just read explanations in the book. He used to say that that Jewish teachings are like dry freeze food. You know, that when it's in the dry freeze form of it, you can't eat it. You have to add water, and the water is a direct experience. It's really it's very important to him that we learned through experience, that Torah was experiential, that we took it into our bodies, took it into our feelings. And I think this story is another example of that there's a teaching about a menorah that you really do not know. Chaim Elia did not know until he experienced the depth of it itself. And I think I wish that for myself and for all of us, that we can really know things through intimate knowing, through direct experience, not only as instructions or secondhand explanations by somebody. So that's one takeaway. It's deeply, deeply touching. And this Hanukkah in particular, it feels that it comes at a time of so much change, of COVID, of climate change, of literally change, climate change and environmental challenges and health challenges. And there's something about theorizing that just doesn't work anymore. We want to experience, we want to know, and we want to make a difference. We don't want to just learn Torah or learn anything for the sake of learning, just for the sake of the intellectual curiosity and our sort of intellectual pleasure. We want to really engage with things in ways that make a difference. I remember, reminds me of many years ago when I was in school, in fact, in rabbinical school. And at the time I lived with roommates. So I had, so we shared this big house. We each had our rooms, but we all shared a kitchen where we would meet. It was a pleasure, really. I remember those days really with delight. And I had this one roommate who I used to watch her cooking. She wasn't much of a cook, but she would often fry eggs. That was her thing. She, every morning she'd come in and she'd make her, fry her eggs over easy or scrambled or whatnot. And she had a way of always burning her eggs. They always come out really dry and burnt, and really, she's a terrible cook or preparer of eggs. And I noticed that, and she would put all kinds of spices and make interesting, or attempt to make interesting omelets, but they always came out burnt. And I noticed as I was watching her that with all her efforts to flavor and to, put ingredients, the one thing she never paid attention to is that she would always cook. It was a range that had real flame, apropos Hanukkah lights, the fire, had real fire. And she always had her fire turned up the largest, a max. So no wonder it would burn because the fire was so hot. And one day I asked her, I said, what's the most important thing in cooking? What makes cooking really good? And she said to me, well, she said, it depends on the ingredients, depends on what you put in there. And I said, no, I disagree with you. I said, it's good to know what the ingredients are, but there's something much more important, and that is managing the flame. And I told her, you're terrible at managing the flame. I've noticed. I gave her some, I wanted to give her some feedback. She didn't like it. I said, you really can't cook on such a high flame. You have to manage it. You have to make sure that your flame is just right. And maybe you start on a high flame and then you put it down, you lower the temperature, or vice versa. You start on a lower temperature and then, put it high and give it a last little boost, but a burst. But the flame, the fire is really what counts. And I remember that after that conversation, I realized that was a metaphor for life. We often get so stuck on the ingredients, but we neglect to look at the flame and the quality of the flame. The inner light, the light that burns within, is more important than the externalities. And that goes for everything. It's as a culture, we have been focusing on externalities and on the economy and on prosperity, especially in Western culture, on efficiency, on the conveniences and comforts. And what has gotten lost is the flame. And what's being revealed to us through COVID and through the subtle and slow but powerful and dangerous breakdown that we're living through is that we have forgotten how to focus on what's more important. I think all of us are just now discovering that under duress, as subtle as it is, for most people, I just want to acknowledge for some people it's actually terrible, those who have lost lives and lost close dear ones. But for the majority who are living under the restrictions of COVID and the slow degradation of the environment and climate change, this is kind of like slow coming. But with the changes and with the looming disaster, I think that we're coming to realize, and hopefully more and more, that we forgot the flame of what is essential in our lives. And many of us are discovering that a connection with family is more important with how much money we have in the bank. And that how we get along in lockdown is it more important than all the conveniences and the things we had to run to, when we were up and on the go. So priorities are shifting, and we're discovering the flame, their inner flame, the flame of essence of what's really important. And hopefully, this is leading us to Mashiach. It's leading us to the big tikkun and the corrections and the greater justice and greater connection, greater integration, and the greater seeing the greater whole, the connection with nature, the harmony with that which is around us, the harmony with the natural world, the harmony with one another, and ultimately the harmony of the seeing of what surrounds us spiritually and our connection with the one. So with that blessing, let's have a happy Hanukkah, and until next time, God willing, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9:00. Happy Hanukkah, Shalom for now.